Yay, I'm live. We're reading Scent of Water by Simisola Ogunyinka, my moi self. And let me quickly say this. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining my live book reading. On this channel, I have been reading, I started reading my book, which you all voted for, Scent of Water. Um, Yesterday something weird happened and I had to delete my video. I repeated a chapter, which I apologize for doing that because I was like, I've read this before. And when I went back to look at the previous video, I saw that I had indeed read it before. So I deleted it. So I'm just going to start from chapter 11 today all over again. I apologize for that. And I just thank God that it wasn't like the main reading. It was even like I wanted to do 2 more chapters, after 5 chapters earlier yesterday. So we're back, we're reading, and it's Scent of Water by Simisola Ogoyinka. And we've read chapters 1 to 10. So today I'm going to start with chapter 11 and I'm going to read a little bit more. I'll read up to chapter 18 today. And join me, share this video, like let your friends know. Let's hop on here and enjoy this book together. I said I was going to be giving a tea each time I read, and I'm just going to repeat the tea I gave in the deleted video, um, which is dreams. The thing about dreams, this book, I got it through a dream. And yes, it was really nice having a dream and then turning it into a story. I do get inspired by different things and different ways. And again, this God came by a dream, but sometimes I get inspired by maybe what is happening even in my family, maybe what is happening in the news, and that's my tea for this book. Give me 1 second. I missed this last time and I'm missing it again.
Recording
All
in
right.
progress.
Yes, I'm recording. Okay, so today I'm going to be reading chapters 11 to 18. And of course, water this time. I don't have my drinks anymore. So I will be drinking that. So I'll just read 2 chapters, take a pause, drink water. If we need to use the bathroom and all that, we can. And then, yay, let's start. The glasses comes on. All right. Chapter 11. Sandra walked briskly into the lobby of Sandap Holdings. She was greeted respectfully by 2 well-dressed receptionists. She moved to the elevator as though she hadn't seen them. In her office on the 6th floor, she backed orders at her secretary before going in. Mike woke up with a start. Heat waves overwhelmed him and he gasped for breath. A prisoner stood up to excrete. Mike felt like throwing up. He thought he should be used to stench by now. One could never be used to such stench. Oh boy, waiting you chop wey una wan kill people for smell, said a prisoner drowsily. You craze, the one isn't replied. Make una empty that thing for morning on your head. Mike turned away to face the wall. He detested the dreams he had. They made no sense at all. He hated to dream about his former life. The memories were too painful. He hadn't heard from Sandra since that horrible day she testified for the prosecution. She had looked more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. She'd refused to make eye contact with him. He had never been able to understand why. There were so many things he hadn't been able to understand. Why was Sandra never allowed to visit him, not even once? He had hoped to apologize and comfort her whenever she came, but Femi had not been able to get a permit for her visit. He'd written several letters to her, but she never replied. Mike turned to lie on his back, but the stench that filled the air was more than he could bear, so he turned away again. Air was scarce in this place. Sandra must really be doing well if dreams came anywhere close to being real. In the few dreams he'd had of her, she'd always looked good, never down or shattered. Maybe it's because that's how I saw her last, he mumbled. Some of his cellmates were snoring, a cough or two also rang the air. A new inmate had joined them earlier in the day. He had been released a few months earlier after serving time for selling marijuana, and now he was back for the same offense. Couldn't people learn? Could he ever drink again if he ever got out of here? He released a long, wistful hiss. He would never get out of here alive unless there was a riot and a jailbreak. Then he would run forever and never come back, never be seen by anyone ever again. He remembered his mother. She never came either. Why? So many questions unanswered. Otoshi, Olore, what a shame. A Yoruba adage that ne'er do good has no friends. But would his own mother also forsake him after all they had been through together? And his only son. He'd heard from Femi that the boy recovered. Oh, oh, oh. Mike burst into tears. For the first time since his incarceration, he allowed the dam to break. He wept till the morning bell began to ring. He remained there silently. The tears poured. The prisoners rose up one after the other, coming alive to a routine life. Two inmates got into a row as they filed to the kitchen. Mike's outburst subsided as the other prisoners hailed the two fighting. Punches flew and grunts were heard. Mike cleaned his face like a child and came out to join the others. One of the men fighting took a punch from his opponent and fell flat on his face. He was bleeding profusely. The warring inmates, breathing heavily, staggered backward. The prisoners all moved on as though nothing had happened. There was no warden in sight. Mike walked slowly to the still figure on the ground. The early morning dew was just lifting, and the beauty of the rising sun was in its full glory. Mike checked for pulse on his fallen colleague. It was very faint. He heaved the beaten man on his shoulder and took him to his cell. A warden approached and roughed him up. "What did you do to him?" he asked. "I helped him after he was beaten up." "Beaten by who? You?" "No, What's going on here?" Another warden approached. They shoved Mike between them, completely ignoring the wounded prisoner. "All I did was help this man up." "Good Samaritan," one warden said. They handcuffed him and pushed him toward the solitary cell. Mike tried to explain, but neither officer listened to him. Solitary confinement was hell redefined. Bare cement floor, squatting space only, little air, and no convenience. Mike had never been there in his 4 years confinement, but now he would taste it. He had seen men there taken there and brought back in a wooden box. "I didn't hurt that man, please," he pleaded. Neither man answered as he was roughly shoved to his disaster. Chapter 12. The first thing Mike did as he was pushed in and locked up was to start throwing up. He burst into tears after that. The stench in solitary was unimaginable, indescribable, and unthinkable. There was no wall space to lean on. The walls were grime. There was no leg space either. The bare floor was filthy. When the tears were spent, Mike had time to think again. No explanation for what his life had been. He had never given God much thought. There hadn't ever been cause to. After his university education, he had been an applicant for months. He studied marketing, and it was just one discipline that employers refused employing. Green marketers were of absolutely no use. Most businessmen want experienced marketers. He had to do a postgraduate course or fellowship or forget about his profession. During his youth call, he got himself trained to be computer literate. It proved to be his salvation. Michael Dabi came from a very poor home. His father was an auto mechanic, his mother a petty trader. They were so poor, they lived in a shed in the mechanic workshop where his father worked. Mike was the third of six children and the second son. Two of his junior siblings died in a cholera plague during their growing up years. His elder brother learned the auto mechanic trade from their father. His elder sister got pregnant while in the first year of her senior secondary education and dropped out of school. She had a baby and never went back to school. Mike determined to do better since there was basically no money to do anything other than feed in the family. Mike did odd jobs to send himself to school. His surviving junior sister later got pregnant and ran away from home. Despite the misery and poverty that surrounded him, Mike was undaunted. He worked and schooled and did well. Mike had grown up to be a very viral young man. He polished himself up as much as he could afford. He was intelligent and prudent. He never took an opportunity for granted and never allowed a challenge to conquer him. He was a bulldozer to the world and also to women, whom he easily attracted with his strong masculine build, handsome face, and his enchanting, domineering voice and courage. What remained to complement him was currency power. Mike was surfing the web one day when he stumbled across an advert for sale of land. An idea occurred to him. He sharpened his marketing acumen and made inquiries. When he reached the office of the estate managers, he had a proposal in place. It sold. He got the manager to purchase the plots of land for himself and went out to resell with half the actual commission. He soon found himself in landed property business. Mike's break did not come until one day when he decided to launch out on his own. He simply got some professionals together and a piece of land that seemed abandoned. The family who owned the land was desperately in need of money. Mike got a bank loan, purchased the land cheaply, and went on a marketing rampage. He sold the land for almost 4 times what he bought it in less than 3 months. Mike Dabi made his first million shortly after his 30th birthday. He became unstoppable. The big break came when when on one of his travels out of town, he noticed extensive large parcels of unoccupied land. On his return, he made inquiries and, like the first time, got a huge bank loan. The loan was so large that it took courage for Mike to decide to go ahead with his plans. He had taken a big risk to use a property up for sale in his possession as collateral. It was the choicest risk he ever took. Within a year, he bought the large parcel of land and sold half the property. He paid the bank before the deadline he set for himself. The sky could not even be a limit after then. He started a school for property marketing and continued his investments in properties. He was soon known as the man with the Midas touch. Business literally turned to gold at his touch. Mike became a philanthropist. He did charities everywhere and donated to humanitarian causes. He soon became a force to reckon with, especially in the Lagos society. At home, he was a beacon. In the early days of his business, before the break, he met Angela. Angela came from a very wealthy family. Mike fell head over heels in love with her and proposed marriage to her. And Angela loved him too, but her family rejected him because of his background. And taking sides with her people, she refused to marry him. It was devastating for Mike. For a brief period, he experienced a setback, but soon pulled himself together and moved on. He bought properties in his hometown and built an estate for his parents. Things were going on so well for him. He took out his loss of Angela on other women and used them as disposables. Sandra was one of such women. He met her at a friend's party and took her home with him. It was meant to be a one-night affair, but it wasn't enough for her. She trailed him, hounded him, and finally got pregnant for him. Mike decided to marry her because of the baby. Shortly after their marriage, he discovered she hadn't been pregnant at first. He had been tricked. His marriage to Sandra was just an arrangement. There was no love between them. He provided for her, and that was saying a lot. She was very materialistic. He had a soft spot for her because she also came from the slums of Mushin in Lagos. He'd relocated her family to Toyin Street, Ikeja, where he bought a property with 4 flats. Her parents stayed in one and rented out the remaining 3 to sustain them. Mike was a good, rich guy. He'd never given God any thought, though. Okay, I am going to take a brief pause. We are going to go on a 1-minute break. Drink water, bathroom break, and so on. I am going to step out real quick to clear my throat because I don't know what's going on here. All right, give me 1 minute. Clearing my throat. Okay. All right. You're back. I'm reading Scent of Water, one of the first novels I wrote, actually. And okay, I'll give that to you later on. Maybe at the end, I will give another tea about Scent of Water. All right. Chapter 13. Mike leaned against the burglary door that confined him in the filth and wept bitterly. Was this how his life would end? He'd made a fortune within 9 years of property investments, yet nothing was accounted to him at the moment. Not even a pair of slippers to his blistered feet. Where was God? How could God allow him to be lifted up so high and then be falling so low? He was a property owner in most major cities in the western part of the country. He owned estates in Ikeja, Ogba, and Lekki. He had property offices all over the country and schools for property marketers. His worth was in multi-millions of investments. Where was God? He was afraid he would die here. Very few people lasted in solitary. Many die after 3 days. Those who manage to live out the standard 1-week confinement become vegetables afterwards. He had never seen anyone live here the same. God, where are you? He wailed. You sent Esam to me and I rejected her. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please get me out of here. Please, 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 he yelled. He could cry all he wanted. He was disturbing no one. Please, 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 please. He yelled till he lost his voice. He must have been dreaming because he'd slept off. Someone was whistling and the sound drew close. Keys jangled so close to his face, he roused. He wasn't dreaming. A prison warden stood in front of him. He was leaning so heavily on the door that he fell forward as the iron bar door was pulled back. Stand up, your lawyer is here. Mike pulled himself up. His feet felt heavy as lead and felt stiff too. He refused to ask for the warden's help as he gradually stood up. Do, let's go, the warden snapped. This place stinks. He shut the slimy iron door with a slam, hitting Mike's heel in the process. Within seconds, the lock was secured and they were on their way out. Mike didn't know for how long he'd been in solitary confinement. After the second night, his brain literally packed up. He couldn't think beyond his hunger and weakness. He was taken to have a shower first before being led to the visitor's room. Ephraim was there with another young man. They were both dressed for court. I have good news. Your appeal has sailed through. We are set for a retrial. Let's talk about your bill. Your bail bond may be very high. What's the matter? Ephraim stopped suddenly and looked at Mike. He hadn't completed the statement when the latter slumped forward. Warden, warden, bring water. They revived him. Ephraim was upset with the prison officials. Mike had not tasted anything for 4 days. They were surprised he could even work. Ephraim arranged for food to be brought. The prison officials indulged him, and after taking a small quantity of ogi and moi moi, they resumed deliberations. How much do you think you can raise from friends for your bail? I don't even know if I have friends. On my own, I may be able to raise 100,000 if you are sure you can pay back. However, I must confess, I fear the bail bond may be as high as 2 or 3 million naira. This is a very unusual case. I have properties in Lagos. My wife is there. She should be able to raise that amount easily, Mike said, feeling a strange queasiness. I'll have to call her today to alert her of the development. Besides, I want to get you out of here as soon as possible. Give me your wife's phone number. I can't remember it, but I'll give you mine. I only hope she kept the phones. Mike replied. He called out 3 phone numbers to Ephraim before he was led away by the warden. The night was warm, though it drizzled a little. Toads croaked close to the small square that represented ventilation in the cell. Some of the inmates snored loudly. 2 fags kissed noisily. But all these were night sounds Mike was used to. His mind drifted aimlessly to Sandra. He had watched her transform from a common call girl to a perfect hostess. She had changed her friends as fast as she changed her wardrobe. If there was anything he admired about her, it was her ability to transform. Suddenly, she was this polished first lady of his business empire. She hosted parties as often as a housewife visited the market. She even began a charity organization for jobless young girls. In that, she honed her skills to manipulate, dominate, and seduce. His friends fell for her charm like fools in love. Sandra was a 1,000-page history book. Somehow, he loved her. She was nothing of a wife, but she kept their marriage safe from harm. She allowed him to do whatever he wanted as long as she was allowed her freedom. Their relationship was nothing short of a farce. He had never missed it for one day. If not that prison was what it was, he could have been grateful for the break. Ironically, another woman occupied his thoughts, one whom he'd never shared more than a few sarcastic words. Esam Bassey had occupied his days and nights, especially the nights. He hugged her to sleep and hugged her to wake. He made a very important note to ask after her when Ephraim came. He wanted more than freedom to see her again. He had resisted asking after her, resisted even thinking about her. He missed every inch of her, the way her lips curved downward slightly as though trying to hide her hurt whenever he made a snide remark. He loved her sleepy eyes and the glow of her smooth skin. He had imagined several times what her skin felt like, what her lips tasted like. No woman had ever turned him on like Esam Bassey, and he didn't think she even knew it. Chapter 14. The phone rang till it stopped again. Ephraim threw his handset aside in frustration. In 3 days, he had done nothing but dial the numbers Mike gave him. And the first number had been ringing without any response. The second was perpetually busy since all the numbers were GSM networks. His wife, Amma, had suggested the line might have been turned to commercial. The third number was not in use. I'm going to have to ask him to give me a contact address, he mumbled and threw the phone on the bed. The August break had been a welcome change from 3 months of continuous downpour. The sun was hot, but cool winds blew. Ephraim stood up and walked to the patio overlooking the garden. Amma spoke softly with the horticulturist that helped her tend the garden once in a while. Most of the beautiful plants and flowers had been gotten from him. Ever since she decided to take up a career in private investigation, she had paid more attention to her love for flowers. Her former career as a lawyer and his partner had not afforded her the time or the energy she now basked in. It was a second or two before Ephraim got snapped out of his reverie by the ring of his phone. It was Mike's first number. Yellow, he backed into the handset. You have been calling this number, an indifferent female voice said. Yeah, call me back. I don't have credit, she said and hung up. Ephraim dialed immediately. The lady picked at the first ring. Yes? My name is Ephraim. Can I speak with Mrs. Sandra Dabi? Wrong number, she said and cut the line again. Ephraim cursed and called back. You have the wrong. Do you know who she is? Ephraim backed desperately. Her husband gave me this number. Please, it's urgent. What did you call the name? Sandra Dabi. Her husband's name is Mike Dabi. Okay. She doesn't use this number. I know her. Who are you? I'm an acquaintance of the husband, Ephraim said carefully. So what can I do for you? I need to talk to her. It's urgent. I don't know her or number offhand. Is Mike dead? Are you in prison too? Ephraim pondered on the questions. This didn't seem like someone who wanted the good of the family. No, I'm not in prison, but I need to speak with Mike's wife. Please, may I know her name? May I know your name? Arike. Is Mike dead? The woman asked impatiently. He's not, Ephraim answered shortly. There was a short pause. The woman sighed once and hissed. Please, can you give me Sandra Dabi's number? I don't have it half-head. Please, Ephraim hissed quietly as he whipped off a lone drop of sweat off his forehead. Send a text. I don't have credit. Okay, write it down on a piece of paper and I'll call back in 5 minutes. Okay, the line went dead. The lady never picked up her handset again whenever Ephraim called. The lead became a dead one. Chapter 15. Bail bond was set at 150,000 naira. Amma traveled to Elisha to find Mike's family and to raise the amount. After the delivery of her third child and son, she had taken back her beautiful figure and became a stunning replica of her twin. Her baby and his nurse had to accompany her on her trip. Elisha, an ancient commercial town, was older than most Western Nigerian towns. For convenience, Amma had taken the first flight out of Calabar to Lagos and chartered a taxi for the 3-hour drive to Elisha. Ever since she took up her new passion in private investigation as a career, she had seen lots of places, but Western cities held a special intrigue for her. Lagos with its stories, some glorious, many gory. Ibadan with its stately backwardness, and not forgetting the ancient landmarks, was the largest developing city in West Africa, yet was doing all to maintain its sanity and combating pollution from neighboring Lagos. Osogbo was quiet voice of civilization. Perhaps making it a state capital was the best thing that happened to it. Suddenly, Osogbo was to be reckoned with. The The people didn't seem to realize their new status enough. Something more could be done. And then there was Ile-Ife, the wounded prince of the Westerners. One of the greatest mysteries of the Yorubas, Modayeke, tortured them endlessly while battling for a freedom civilization ought to have bestowed them on a platter. Talk of servants riding horses while masters trekked. Civilization was simply dealt unfairly with the civilization simply dealt unfairly with the town. Even the university community could not intervene enough in the Ife Modakeke crisis when it raged. Amma had cause to visit all these towns before, but never Elisha. Now she was adding another feather to her cap. The weather was beautiful and traveler friendly as the plane landed at the Muitala Mohammed airport. Amma muttered a few words of prayer. The taxi picking her had been arranged prior to her trip. Everything was set to roll with the leading of the Holy Spirit, of course. The taxi driver was already at the airport to pick them with a placard bearing her name. She greeted the short, bulky man and they were led to the parked taxi. It was a neat Toyota Carina too. Amma was pleasantly surprised. The car was as comfortable as it looked. Amma wondered how much Ephraim had paid the car hire service for such an executive ride. Her heart leapt for joy and she dialed his number to tell him they'd arrived safely. Ephraim was a great guy and she never regretted working for him. He was a wonderful boss, husband, friend, and lover. Great weather, ma'am. The driver broke into her thoughts with impeccable speech. Some executive driver, too. Amma thought to herself nicely. Yes, we thank God. Your first time in Lagos? He asked. He had a genial voice, and Amma thought conversation was okay. Absolutely not, she smiled. It's a kite's first, though, Amma said, referring to the baby nurse. Not so, madam. I worked in Akure. Really? Akure is a lovely town. Yes, madam. Most capital cities are, the driver said, especially in the west. I visited Akure with a friend once. Amma remembered the memorable trip. Owo, Ado Ekiti, Ondo, Akure, back to Omuaran. They spent 1 week touring Ondo State and fooling around Ikare Ekiti, Ikere, Inyi, Ipele, and Akoko here and there. Owena Ondo and Owena Oshun. She saw the life and wealth of Nigeria in Ondo State. When the state was broken into Ondo and Ekiti states, she applauded the people. She'd wished she married her journalist friend who had been working on a story that took him around the beautiful towns and cities. Ondo people were receptive, forgiving, and loved their pounded yam. She had not married him because his people called her Nyomiri. They thought she was a beautiful stranger who would take him away from them, and he couldn't defend her enough. Their separation had been uneventful. Ondo State was a very rich, well endowed, and grossly untapped state. The wealth of the country got hid in the hills and mountains, in oil and marbles, in cocoa, and in the wealth of knowledge and education of the indigenes. Those were one people Amma would have loved to be a part of. They were the pride of Nigeria. The town is continually changing for the better, the driver said. What's your name? Amma asked the driver. Shegun, ma'am. Uncle Shege, right? Amma smiled. That's the president's namesake. He's from my place too, in Owu. His father's compound is just next to my grandfather's. I thought he's from Ogun State. Yes, he is. We are. Shegun felt proud. Owu, is that the name of your village? Yes, it's just more like a part of Abeokuta somehow. My mother had a friend from Ijebu-Ode, Amma said and smiled. Is it true they are really wicked people? We are all wicked if we want to be, but it's true Ijebu people have a knack for vengeance. Shegun smiled. I hear your Abeokuta people are also very, very wicked, Amma said with an attitude, and Shegun laughed. They approached the camp venue of one of the big churches, and Amma gasped. Slow down, she said, and Shegun did. A large billboard announced the entrance of the ministry. Flowers hedged a very low fence that surrounded the camp. I've only seen this place on the TV. Is it true that when they hold their meetings, these highways get jammed? Amma asked, like a true novice. Yes, ma'am. Most travelers now know how to avoid the meeting times. Really? That's wonderful. I must try and attend sometime. Amma mumbled as they moved on. She noticed quite a few other billboards announcing religious gatherings and camp meetings. This highway has been turned to a religious way, I must say. They drove quietly through the express that linked Lagos to Ibadan, passing turns to major towns like Shagamu. Amma knew Ogun State had produced many great leaders for Nigeria. It almost seemed as though they were chosen to rule the country among their people. Amma's mother's friends had told them great stories about her home state. The big and beautiful towns, Abeokuta, Ijebu-Ode, and others she couldn't quite remember. One she'd visited herself was Otta, where the president's farm was. They'd gone for a conference at the Gateway Hotel. Amma had always taken interest in places. She wrote journals of places she'd visited and took notes of landmarks. Otta had hit her square in the face as a big city. Many Lagosians had extended to Otta, either living or working there. Shegun, yes, ma'am. You know I can't speak your language. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to need you to listen carefully for me when we reach Ilesha. I want every Yoruba word spoken around me articulated. No problem. They drove past a gory occult campsite on the outskirts of Ibadan, and Amma gaped. She'd heard of all the stories. She had an ear for listening. Let me take a quick water break and then we'll continue. Mm, Okay, let's continue. Chapter 16. Why are you dressed like that? He asked, his gaze fixed on her. He had walked in slowly, relishing every moment he had to scrutinize her before he got to her. Good morning. She stood up and tried to smile, but failed. Why are you dressed like this? He repeated. Like how? She looked at herself, shocked. To think that she had developed a headache cracking her skull, trying to pick what to wear. His gaze followed her, assessing her. She wore an ash lace buba and iro. It was a nice, modest outfit. It also complemented her creamy complexion. She used pearls to complete the outfit, pearl earrings, bangle, and necklace, and wore low-heeled ivory sandals. Her makeup was light. He followed her gaze back up. What's wrong with what I'm wearing? He couldn't really care what she was saying. He loved her voice. You're wearing my favorite color, he said softly and took his seat. She could have blushed a bit red if she was white. Why couldn't she go unnoticed to this man? She always did something to catch his attention. And you look like a Yoruba woman in the outfit, he said, searching her face. Do your people tie wrapper like that? He knew they didn't. No, she cleared her throat. Her mouth was dry. This man never seemed to stop surprising her. Now he was friendly and calm. What an irony. She didn't trust him. She stood looking at him. His hair was overgrown. He still had a lot of stubble and rashes on his face. She swallowed hard as she returned his gaze. No man deserved to live like this. Not even a convicted killer. We don't tie wrappers, our men do. Strange culture, isn't it? He smiled. Sit down, or are you in a hurry? She sat slowly, not sure of what to expect from him. He was a caged animal, angry, irate. He'd sent Ephraim to ask her to come, and that made her suspicious. The standard procedure was to allow 30 minutes per guest, except for his lawyer. But she didn't know he had tipped the wardens for more than 2 slots of the time. He could keep her for the whole day if he wanted. 500 naira every extra 30 minutes. Money taken on loan from Ephraim. But it was worth it. Anything for her was worth it. He would pay double. even triple what he'd borrowed to keep her all day. Esam, what is the full meaning? He asked. His gaze remained steadfast on her face. He drank in everything about her, every expression, every move. Nothing went unnoticed or unassimilated. He would replay everything later, and those thoughts would sustain him through his ordeal. Abasiesa is the full meaning. I never really got the meaning out of my parents. Do you have an English name? No. My father once said the Englishman does not give his children Efik names. Why should he call his children English names? She smiled. His gaze followed the smile and he ached. He wanted so badly to touch her. Instead, he turned away sharply, his jaws twitching in desperation and anger. How much emotional pain can a man bear in his body? You're Efik? Yes, I come from Enshaw Town, but my mother is from Etinan in Akwa Ibom State. He loved her sing-song voice. He'd promised himself to be of a good behavior. He won't scare her or reduce her to tears. She had won his heart, and now he desperately tried not to see it break. Only her innocence threatened him. She didn't even have a hint of the emotional distress he was passing through. So you are a half-breed, he said lightly, and she laughed, a soft, bubbly sound that brought his face back to hers. You do know about that. Ethics believe they are superior to Akwa Ibom people. I've learnt a lot since I came to Calabar. I even picked a little of your language, he said proudly. Really? What he didn't tell her was that he started taking interest in her heritage after he met her. Miss Sere, he greeted jokingly. Emesere nde, idemfo. Oh, awesome. He laughed and coughed. Sorry, take it easy, she gestured. Bele, she teased. He looked at her and laughed his deep, guttural laughter again. I'll give you a Yoruba name, one that suits you. Omoumi. Omoumi. She rolled her eyes. What does it mean? Wumi. Oh, it means desired. A child desired, he said with an emotion-laden voice. She got his message loud and clear. I'll teach you Yoruba too sometime. He smiled. He hadn't laughed so freely in over 4 years now. Probably hadn't even laughed at all. It was a welcome relief. Sometime, she said, feeling more hope than she thought was good for her. Effiong is a very good lawyer and he's working hard on this case, she said quietly. He sees it as a professional challenge. I'm not optimistic, Mike replied. It's a good enough reason for anyone to win. He's putting his career on the line for it. She paused. You do know about professional challenge, don't you? I do. I've had quite a few too. I've worked with a lot of lawyers too. I can't do without them in my business. Some are very ambitious and dubious. Lawyers are liars, they say. Still, I need them almost more than the properties I sell. Esam was amused. Tell me about your work, she asked. It was a good sign. She was relaxing. Chapter 17. Mike caressed her with his gaze. Her makeup was light. He wondered if it would be forward if he asked her to pull off her scarf. He wanted to see her hair and touch it. Estate management, marketing, and sales. I buy a property and I resell. Sometimes I just do the work of an agent. I place the property on lease, maintain it, and collect rent. It's quite straightforward but exciting. I've built estates within and outside Lagos, some banks too. You've heard of VGC? She nodded vigorously. My company built it, and some other awesome structures. I manage estates for some heavy names too, like IBB, the General, the Cooler People, and Lagos State Government. Oh, he shook his head. The biggest contracts have come from there. Some also have come from the FCT. I've done jobs outside the country to Ghana, Togo, Kenya, and the Gambia, and so many other places. The experience is really something. I insist on quality. That's my trademark. That's why people love me, he shrugged. His resume was definitely intimidating. Tell me about some of the challenges you've had, Esam said. She was more relaxed now. She even found herself enjoying his company. She was a bit surprised that the warden that brought him in had left almost immediately. They could come in for him anytime. Whoa, he sighed, thinking, well, I remember a property I sold in VI. It belonged to an Igbo widow woman. Her husband had just passed on that morning in the early hours, and she wanted their house sold before telling the family of his death. I was a bit worried at first about involving myself in such a thing, but she was elderly and had been married to the man for about 40 years. They had 3 children, they had 3 daughters, no son, and had built the wealth together. He had worked at an international organization for decades and had made his money from there. He'd also made an alternative arrangement for his wife and children at his death. She was fulfilling his wishes because he knew his brothers in the village could kill to get the house at VI. She had the complete and accurate documents for the property, so who was I to decline? I followed her back to value the house and placed it in the market. It sold within 24 hours. I remember selling it for 150 million naira. Mike smiled. What? How was she to explain what happened to the house? I was to pretend the house had been sold by the husband privately before his death. She was supposed to be as shocked about the sale as the brothers when they came. Truthfully, she had expected the house would stay a little on the market and then she would tell them she couldn't find the documents. 150 million naira. It was a beautiful property in that location. The land alone was valued at over 40 million naira. The woman was hoping the house could sell between 100 million and 120 million. I beat her imagination. Besides, I sold the house with all the furniture intact. Only personal effects were removed. There was the silent buzzer generator. All the rooms had split units, a magnificent 7-room mansion with 4 sitting and living rooms. I can't finish describing it. The grounds were, divided between the paved area and the massive, well manicured garden. You should have seen it. The 150 million naira was a giveaway prize. I had called 3 of my best clients. One of them paid the following morning at first light. I got my 20% cut intact. Mike laughed at the expression on her face. 30 million? Esam wanted to be sure. Was he bluffing? Oh, the family fought me with all the demons in their village, as though I was their brother who sold his own house. He should have left something for the village people. Well, I think he did. I don't know. He shrugged. His daughters came back to thank me after the burial with a 2 million naira check gift. It was awesome. Awesome, awesome. I come from a rich family, but not this kind of money. No way. Esam laughed. What? That kind of money was a norm in my business. I started with a 30 million naira loan and turned it to 300 million naira after the first year. I'm not afraid to count millions. He stared pointedly at her. How much of the millions entered your pocket? She teased. A lot, quite a lot. I was on a basic monthly allowance of 1.5 million naira. I had fringe benefits, and of course, I got the chunk of the profit. You had partners? No. I appointed some people to my board anyway, sleeping partners, you might call them. A huge part of the millions declared as profits went to philandering. Come to think of it, I wonder what I was spending all my money on. Money has value when we don't have it, she said softly. Do you know? Talking of money having value when you don't have it, I sold a property once for a young gentleman. The property was an inheritance from his father, passed from his grandfather. I didn't want to handle the business, but he insisted I did it myself. Poor people can be so petty when they see big money. He chuckled. The building was dilapidated due to several tenants passing through and no maintenance culture. Though located in Bagada, a very nice area in Lagos, the condition of the house was deplorable. This guy had the right papers and all, but he wasn't ready to put the property in shape before selling. I told him I could spend my money to fix the house and then deduct my money with interest after sales. He refused. Okay, I said. I offered to loan him money to fix the house. He refused. So I sold the house in the deplorable state for 3.5 million naira and handed him his money en block. Shoo, that much? It was a block of 4 rooms with a general kitchen and bathroom. Each of the rooms had their own toilets, but of course, most were out of use. Nothing fantastic. It was overpriced. I just did it to help the young man. Of course, it would have been much less in another location, but we valued the land and the property separately to be fair. That man's land alone was well worth 3 million naira. The structure on it was worth nothing. Anyway, I pulled down the whole thing and built a twin bungalow, 2 bedrooms each. I sold the new property for over 20 million naira. It's a lie, Esam screamed. Made a clean profit of 10 million naira thereabout. You had bought the property? Yeah. The guy didn't know at first though. Was that fair? It's business. I had offered to loan him 10 million naira to do the whole makeover. He could have made as much as 7 million or even 8 million naira. All because I asked for 2.5 million to handle the whole contract for him. He balked. I was ready to arrange everything while he sits back and waits patiently for me to deliver his cut. It sounded too good to be true. He thought I wanted to dupe him. What would you think? Esam sighed. She was enjoying this conversation. Well, 6 months later, I got a letter from this guy's lawyer suing me for cheating him of his property. Somehow he'd got wind of all that happened. Someone in my office tipped him. He was suing for 10 million naira damages. Minecraft, remembering. You won the case. What do you think? The guy had squandered the 3.5 million naira in 6 months and was looking for a scapegoat. He didn't have anything anymore. The house had been his only inheritance. He had no job and no accommodation. He must have thought the 3.5 million would last forever, Esam said. Forever. Forever was 6 months for him. Money can fly. Well, I helped him get a job at a friend's company. At least the job also got him a small accommodation, he said, reminiscing. How do you feel being here after all this success? Esam knew she was trading on dangerous grounds. Emotions, feelings, they were dangerous. He could lose his temper anytime. Lonely, sad, upset. I miss my bed. He looked at her, but there was no pain in his gaze. He seemed so calm. I'm glad you're so calm today. Me too. There was a pause. He was contemplating opening up with her. Would she chase him away? Could he express himself properly? He didn't want to spoil his chances with her. Was it even proper to make advances? He was an inmate. She was pondering on taking her leave. She'd spent more than the allotted time already and was wondering if something was wrong with the prison system or the warden. She'd enjoyed her time with him for the first time, but all good things have an end. Besides, she would be in the hospital in the night. She still had to get home, change, eat, and rest. It's you. What? I mean, my mood is because of you. I should come every day then, she teased. You have monthly rights, right? We can start from there. It had been 7 months since she last came. Okay, now I know I'm welcome. Yes. He wanted to say more, but there was a clog in his throat. I have to leave now. I'm on call tonight. And I have 1 or 2 things to do before then, she said. Sure. Thanks for coming. I really enjoyed this visit, he said, remaining on his seat. She stood up, feeling sad. Will the warden come for you? No, no, he'll come when he sees you leave. She thought that was strange. Okay, next month then. She started to walk out feeling fallen. Esam, he stood up suddenly. His heart hit hard on his chest. She stopped and turned to face him. There were tears in her eyes. He meant to apologize for something. Thanks, he choked. Chapter 18. They always had a uniform for appearing in court. The inmates called it court day dress. It was the usual khaki shorts or long sleeved shirt and knickers, just that it was always newer than their normal shakpa wear. On admission into any Alabama city prison, each convict is allowed to enter with his shakpa wear, and later he will be given one state court day dress uniform. All convicts use this to serve their jail term for months, years, or lifetime. 30 years above and lifetime convicts do hard labor and also earn some money, which enables them to buy a new uniform to replace the old one for a change. Many who have no hope just use their shakpa wear after some years. They never washed earlier than once a month. It wasn't good for the fabric. Some of the inmates who have family members visiting regularly kept money on record so their relatives, the convicts, can acquire new uniforms when they come just to keep looking neat. After Esam's first few visits, Mike had changed to the new uniform. The first one had been worn, but he hadn't really cared about it much. From the time he had hoped to impress her, he'd tried to tidy up. It was a Herculean task. The morning here was chilly, but Mike felt nothing. He was just as numb inside as he was outside. He laid his uniform beside him and fingered the rough fabric gently. It was brand new. He'd never thought he would ever need it. Femi had told him there was no hope in appealing. Femi Williams was one of Sandra's distant cousins. From what Mike learned, Sandra had been like a singing mosquito to a sleepy man's ears to him. He had swatted at her several times with the hope of getting rid of her. He was, at the time, a struggling barrister at law. Though he'd been practicing for over 20 years, he had almost nothing to show for it. He was married to a nurse who hated her job and husband almost equally and had four lousy children. His wife, Arike, hated Sandra and drove her continuously from their home. When Mike decided to marry Sandra, their first port of call was Femi Williams's. She wanted to show him off to Uncle to prove that she'd finally made good with her life. Femi was smarter. He wouldn't be caught with his back on the ground. He took to Mike like fish to water. Before anyone knew it, he was handling all of Mike's contracts. Suddenly, tattered lawyer Femi Williams was corresponding with governors, ministers, and billionaire business tycoons. Like all lawyers, he loved people seeing his face in their homes. He was on every major TV station talking about one property or suite. He dabbled into a little into litigation and other suites for a few big shots here and there. His name couldn't but be mentioned in every government or social gathering. He started the rumor himself about vying for the post of Lagos State Governor, fired the flame to frenzy, and then went on air to deny any claim of eyeing the most coveted post in the state. In the privacy of the sitting room, he'd laughed and told Mike that it was all propaganda. Every major newspaper published the press release. Femi, who had a humble background, soon became the toast of the nation. His friends and colleagues envied him. From the three-bedroom flat he managed with his wife, four children, two in-laws, and his aged mother in the suburbs of Ojuelegba, he moved his family to a private property off Okpebi Street, Ikeja, and got a four-room office space on Allen. Femi's residence occupied 4 standard plots of land with much of the grounds paved and the other part a beautiful garden. In less than 5 years, his appointment of the highest honor in the Nigerian judicial system was approved. Femi Williams became a senior advocate of Nigeria, SAN. Arike became the queen of their world. She would rather be the wife of a celebrity than a nurse. So she resigned from the small private hospital where she had worked for almost 10 years. She managed their 8-bedroom duplex well, filling most of the rooms with members of her family. Her love for Sandra skyrocketed beyond limits, and the two were often seen together in public at social occasions. They were like salt and pepper. Femi had ensured Arike fitted herself perfectly well into their new status. You must never let an opportunity slip by, he always quoted. Their 4 children's school had been changed to fit the new family status. Most of these gestures had amused Mike, and he teased Sandra about them. Even the richest man in your family can't seem to handle this breakthrough, he said. But mockeries had always been a part of Sandra's lifestyle. Her father had been retired from civil service a month to the time he would be pensionable for fraud. The family had plunged into acute poverty. Her mother had never done any other thing apart from having children. She had 11, most of them dropouts and near do goods. Sandra's big break had spread round the whole family. Mike knelt down and rested his head on his state uniform. He was cold and hot, uncertain yet indifferent. He was at that crossroad where a child would be convinced he could run and yet try to walk and fall. Oh God, help me. Help me for whatever reasons you please. Help me get out of this mess. Either way, for good. And there ends my reading for today. I will not be reading tomorrow, but on Friday, I'll be back with chapter 19. I'm going to be reading like 7 or 8 chapters on Friday, so watch out. It's the same time. I'm going to keep to this time. I think this time is nice. My neighbors have all gone to work. Everywhere is sort of quiet. So Friday, February 28th, I will be back with our live book reading, and I'll be continuing with Scent of Water. Also, please check the link, the description. I am also promoting for a few brands. So if you want to check my description, you'll see one of those brands, and click on the link. Check out beautiful gadgets that they have. They have beautiful gadgets. All right. Then to my tea, I said I was gonna give a tea about Scent of Water. So Scent of Water is a book that I wrote when from a dream. I think it's the very first book that I even wrote from a dream. I think that was the first time that I realized, oh, this dream could be a story, and Scent of Water came out from there. Also, I am that writer that has been writing. I kept at it. In fact, when I first published Scent of Water with an online company, somehow they just ended the contract. They just deleted all the files. It was already on Amazon. They just took it out. So I went to self-publish myself. And that is how I got this Scent of Water published in 2007. Initially, I had published it in 2005 or something. Anyway, but Scent of Water is a book that I got from a dream. And I am that writer who keeps writing. I keep writing. I keep writing. And that's what I want to encourage every one of us listening to my voice, watching this video. Keep writing. If you're a writer, I'm on to you. I'm going to be saying that a few times, a couple times, several times, many times. Keep writing. Don't give up on it. Your writing may not earn you the income you want at the beginning. And it may not even seem like doing much for you. But if you are passionate about writing, write. Let me repeat that. If you are passionate about writing, write. Keep writing. For me, my writing showed up for me when my family moved to the United States, and I was able to get a national waiver based on my special skill of writing. I had been writing for over 10 years at the time, and it paid. It paid off for me. I got my husband and 4 kids legal. So keep writing, keep writing. I'll see you on Friday on this show. Let me call it on this show, on this book reading show. See you on Friday. I'm going to be reading like 7 to 8 chapters, maybe more. And if you're just joining today or just seeing this video, go back, check chapters 1 to 10, and see you later. Bye. Ending stream now.